2017 Triumph Street Cup. It's 900cc Bonneville engine. It's basically Triumph Street Twin with some changes to make it look more like a cafe racer. What I think is quite a nice sexy yellow and silver paint scheme. It's got a cowl over the pillion seat. As you can see, it's got drop bars and bar end mirrors, so definitely looks more, I don't know whether sporty is the right word, but I don't even know whether aggressive is the right word, but it certainly looks less standard than the classic Street Twin, which has in fact quite high handlebars and obviously has the normal pillion setup. The Street Twin is designed really for customisation, so all the marketing blurb from Triumph tells us. I think that's just a way of saying we've got lots of extras here you can buy, spend some money, chaps. The Street Twin is standard price is $7,500, whereas this one, the Street Cup, add on an extra £1,100. And what do you get for that? You get the drop bars, the bar end mirrors, a sexier paint scheme, slightly higher suspension, the fly screen at the front here. Oh, and you get the twin gauges, which I like. That was, I have to say, one of the things that attracted me to the bike. I preferred those to the single gauge that you get on the Street Twin. With the twin gauges, it's essentially, or it is not essentially, it is the same. Physically, it's the same as you get on the T100, the T120, and the Thruxton R and the Thruxton. Doesn't quite have the same functionality. The functionality depends on the particular bike. So some of those have got rider modes, whereas this Street Cup doesn't have ride modes, but it's got in essence the same appearance and functionality as those. So I think it's a very nice looking bike. I've had it a week. It's done, well, if I test it out, it's done 257 miles in that week. Well, in fact, it had 4 miles when I picked it up, so it's done a bit less than just over 250 miles. It is my first bike, and the weather's not been great over the last week. Lots of ice and indeed fog around, so I've not, for all of those reasons, I've not done anything too drastic with it. Taken it really rather carefully, as you'd probably understand, so I'm not going to tell you that it has any particular handling aspects, positive or negative. I found it, pretty easy to ride, as I say, my first bike, and I'm pretty pleased with it. I did deliberately pick this bike because the Street Twin, everything I could read about it said it was sort of a great bike as a first big bike, if you like, or indeed as a first bike, and that was important to me, and so for those reasons I thought this was a pretty safe choice, and so far I think I've been correct in that assessment. Niggles hasn't got any storage, but if you buy a cafe racer type bike, I suppose you expect that. The tank isn't the biggest in the world. I'm not sure actually how big it is. I think from memory something like 14 litres, but it's just, when you sort of fill it up or fill it as close as you can get to it saying it's full without slopping petrol over the top, It at the moment comes up and says it's got about 130 mile range. I suspect it's more than that, because that sort of improves, doesn't go down very quickly. You can see at the moment it says it's got 107 miles range left on it. In essence, if you're going out for anything like a reasonable ride, you normally need to think about a fuel stop somewhere along the way. If I go through the gauge, play around with the electronics on the left hand gauge, you can see it thinks it's been giving me about 66 to the gallon, which I guess is pretty good. I certainly wouldn't have expected that. I'm pretty happy with it. The engine, it's the 900cc high torque Bonneville engine at all legal speeds. It's got plenty of torque, does everything you would want from it. And it sounds absolutely fantastic. Don't know how much of the engine you'll be able to pick up from within the microphone in the helmet. But it does have a great thrum when you twist the throttle. And one other thing that's noticeable is it gets an awful lot of attention. Almost the first day I had it, actually, I parked at a cash point and came back 2 minutes later, and there was an elderly gent in his 70s looking at it wistfully, talking about how great Triumphs were and the bikes he rode in his day. And I think that's obviously his classic Bonneville shape, but also I think the colour scheme, you know, it's pretty bright, and that probably just makes people in the first place, you know, have a look at the bike and go, what's that over there? At which point then the memories start flooding back, and the conversations about classic Triumphs of the past, and indeed probably Nortons and others. Oh dear, there you go. Actually that's one thing I've noticed. If you come around a corner, well, I mean that was in second, but if you come around a corner with next to no throttle on, the bike really is a bit chuggy, if that's a sensible word. So it's not got a lot of, I suppose, a lot of idle thrust. Even here, look, that's interesting, I've got the clutch right in. It is a bit on and off, on and off, on and off. Actually, one thing I should say is the clutch, the gear change is fantastic. Torque assist clutch makes life very easy indeed. And having said that, there's not a lot of idle. What's it doing? You can see it's doing round about 1,000 revs. Maybe when I go in for the first service I'll ask them to see if they can just tweak that up a little bit. But in the 260 odd miles I've been riding, I think I've stalled it. I'm not sure if it's 2 or 3 times. So it's not too bad. In fact, before we finish, let me just it'll stop now because I'm going to put the stand down. But let me just put the stand down and just have a look at the bike. It's a beautiful bike. It's not quite the standard setup, so I've added crash bars, engine covers, a sump guard down the bottom, and I've changed the indicators front and back to LED. But I think it looks really cool in yellow, silver and black. Oh, I've also added the pads to protect the tank. One thing I'm really pleased about is the mirrors, bar end mirrors. I wasn't over impressed with the Mickey Mouse standard mirrors on the Twin, which was the bike I test rode. So I'd sort of decided in my own mind that if I was going to buy the Twin, Street Twin, then I'd want to go for bar ends. And you know, when I got back to the showroom, there next to the Twin in the showroom was the Street Cup, and the mirrors and the gauges were big selling points for me. The seat also, actually, it's slightly higher, it's about an inch higher I think than the Street Twin, and I think that's good for me. I mean, the Street Twin would have been fine, but that extra inch on the back just means it's a bit more substantial. So I'm pleased with that, and I just love the appearance. Great bike. So that's it. Triumph Street Cup observations 1 week in.